The story is set in a very distant future where many planets and moons have become human habitats, and the universe has been conquered by an empire known as the Mother World. Their leader, called the Regent, is named Balisarius, who took over power after the royal family was killed. Several rebel groups have emerged on various planets, and thus the Imperium sends troops to crush them all. Just as what happened some time ago, an admiral named Atticus Nobel landed on the moon Velt, demanding that the local farmers hand over their entire wheat harvest to his troops, and all of it had to be prepared within 10 weeks, or annihilation would occur. Of course, what the admiral asked for was impossible, because if they gave up their entire wheat harvest, the villagers would run out of food. A former soldier named Cora and one of the villagers named Gunnar embark on a quest to gather tough fighters who will help them in their resistance movement. During their adventure, they encounter Atticus at a trading post, and a battle ensues in which Cora's group emerges victorious. However, unfortunately, the Imperium revives Atticus, repairs all the damage, and once he feels better, the admiral immediately plans his revenge. Back in Velt, Cora and Gunnar return to the village with the fighters they have gathered, and a robot, JC-1435, named Jimmy, who was once one of the Imperium's war machines, watches from a distance as if waiting. Additionally, an Imperium soldier named Aris reports to his commander when contacted. Aris gives a false report, stating that everything is fine and that the harvest is progressing well and is expected to be delivered before the target date. In reality, as we know, Cora had brutally wiped out the entire squad. It turns out that Aris, who is now on Velt's side, reports to Cora about a dreadnought battle fleet that will arrive in 5 days. One of the fighters, Titus, asks all the villagers to gather, motivates them, and then explains a plan. Wheat is extremely important to the soldiers of the Mother World, and therefore the villagers must use it as a shield to protect the village from bombardment. Titus also mentions that he will train the villagers in martial arts so that they can join the fight when the time comes. At night, while everyone rests, Cora takes the opportunity to share her painful past, which has made her a fugitive across the universe. Cora is the adopted child of Balisarius, who once worked to protect the royal family, particularly the princess. One day, the king, tired of bloodshed, decided to pursue political approaches and peaceful means in conquest. This decision was strongly opposed by Balisarius, as it rendered his military might useless and made him feel weakened. Therefore, together with the nobles, he arranged a meeting with the royal family to carry out a massacre. Cora was forced to follow her father's orders to eliminate all of the king's guards, especially Princess Issa. Of course, Cora couldn't bear to do it, but the princess sincerely told her it was okay and forgave her, so Cora shot her. Shockingly, after that, Balisarius shouted, "Traitor," referring to Cora, and accused her of betraying and killing the entire royal family. Consequently, the soldiers were ordered to capture her, and naturally, Cora didn't stand by idly. However, unable to bring herself to kill her father, her only choice was to flee. This fugitive status forced Cora to change her name from Arthelaise to Cora, an orphan and war victim who worked as a farmer on Velt. The scene shifts back to the present, showing the Admiral raging in the medical room because the doctors do not allow him to go back on duty. This prompts the doctor to call the commander who is currently acting as the leader, Cassius, to come. Surprisingly, after hearing the explanation, Cassius hands a pistol to Atticus to kill one of the doctors, which indirectly supports the Admiral in leading the ship. During the release process, Cassius notices the scar on Atticus's chest, which, according to the Admiral, is better left as a mark that will be remembered, signifying that Atticus is the only one who managed to conquer Arthelaise, also known as the Scar-Giver. Back on Velt, the farmers and fighters are required to wake up very early to manage their harvest. They work together, strengthening their bonds and boosting the spirit of cooperation, which is also part of their training. Many tasks are accomplished, culminating in packing all the wheat into sacks. While working, a sense of closeness begins to develop among them, notably between Nemesis and a young boy, which helps alleviate Nemesis's pain from losing her child. Titus, inspired by these newfound connections, resolves to stop drinking alcohol, replacing his favorite drink with water. Meanwhile, Aris, who has grown close to a girl named Sam, finds himself increasingly accepted as a fighter. When it's time to report, Aris continues his pattern of lying, but this time he must weave a more complex web of deceit about his companions who are vigilantly watching over the harvest, including describing some brutality that keeps the villagers compliant. However, after the call ends, it is revealed that Cassius is aware of Aris's fabrications, and the Admiral is convinced that Cora is orchestrating everything. Once the task of preparing the wheat is complete, all the villagers gather to celebrate. During this moment, Sam presents each fighter with a handmade craft that symbolizes their personality. Titus is represented as a strong and unyielding mountain, Tarak as a dignified and passionate reindeer, Milius as the radiant and warming sun, and Nemesis as a fierce storm that is also a source of life. Gunnar is the heart and hope of the villagers, and lastly, Cora is depicted as a wolf, ever vigilant in protecting even amid devastation. Everyone seems happy, and at this moment, Titus sings a calming song in memory of the fallen warriors, which is also heard by Jimmy. The next day, combat training begins after placing the entire harvest around their homes and digging trenches around the fields to create surprise attacks. They start gathering weapons. Aris brings all the armaments left by his former squad, and the villagers also prepare the rifles and machetes they own. Then, Cora and Titus teach the villagers who show talent in shooting, like Sam, while many others feel confident using close-range weapons as they liken it to farming. Sometime later, Cora went to the landing site where she first arrived on Velt, where there was a ship that might be useful. Together, they pulled it out. After several hours of inspection and repairs, they found that the ship was still functioning well. That evening, when the fighters gathered, Titus suggested that each of them share their backgrounds and the reasons for their fight against the Imperium. Titus started first by telling a story about a kingdom that decided to declare independence. Belisarius did not respect that decision and sent a force led by Titus to attack the capital. In the final moments, Titus found a reason to stop the battle, leading to their ship being shot down along with his soldiers. Titus turned against the Imperium, and of course they were easily defeated. Titus surrendered on the condition that his soldiers would be released. Initially, the Imperium agreed to the offer, but after capturing Titus, they carried out a massacre. Titus felt incredibly guilty and swore never to surrender again, no matter what happened. Next, it was Milius's turn. She came from a land where most of the inhabitants were peaceful livestock farmers. For some reason, despite giving everything, they were still tortured and made to suffer even more. One day, the rebel group Bloodaxe came and attacked, killing all the Imperium soldiers and freeing the slaves. From that moment, Milius, who was in awe of them, decided to leave behind her false peace and join Bloodaxe to achieve true peace. Nemesis came from a land where most of the inhabitants were fishermen. Not much different from Milius, the fishermen did not fight back, but for some reason all of them were slaughtered, including the children. The fishermen indeed loved peace, but it wasn't always like that. There was a time when they were once a fierce group. Nemesis decided to undergo an ancient ritual that transformed her into a creature full of vengeance. Tarak, as we know, is actually a prince. His father, who tried to meet the Imperium to declare independence while maintaining peaceful relations, was killed, and his body was sent back to the palace as a warning of the invasion. Shortly afterward, the Imperium forces attacked, destroying everything indiscriminately. To preserve the royal lineage, Tarak was ordered to flee while the Queen decided to end everything, including their kingdom. Tarak then hid with the refugees, struggling to survive to maintain the royal bloodline, and swore to avenge the Imperium. Gunnar, as we know, is a farmer fighting to defend his village. Strangely, Cora closed herself off to her fellow fighters by saying that she was an orphan who had once been a regular soldier in the Imperium. Titus began to suspect, but did not force her to tell more. The next day, Cora headed to the mountains to hide the ship inside a cave behind a waterfall. There she was approached by Jimmy, and the two discussed past wars filled with bloodshed. Having lost his purpose since the king's death, Jimmy revealed that he now fights to protect the weak. Unfortunately, the robot refused to join the fighters because, based on his calculations, Cora's group had no chance of winning the battle. Sometime later, the awaited moment arrived. The dreadnought ship emerged from behind the clouds, and fortunately the villagers had completed all their preparations. Inside the dreadnought, Atticus and several officers monitored the situation using radar and realized that they couldn't fire their weapons because the wheat protected the villagers' houses. Moreover, they observed that one of the houses was occupied by several people believed to be women and children. Atticus decided to lead the troops directly and pretended to negotiate with Cora. Soon after, during the meeting, Cora offered the wheat needed by the soldiers so that the battle wouldn't have to happen. However, Atticus said that wasn't enough. His troops had already invaded the villagers' houses and were ready to shoot if Cora didn't surrender. Cora had no choice because her sole purpose was to protect the villagers, so she signaled her comrades to retreat and bid them farewell. However, Gunnar refused because he was convinced it was just a trick by Atticus. Gunnar quickly grabbed a pistol and shot a bell, which served as the signal to start the battle. Of course, Atticus was furious and immediately jumped into the trench to take out the villagers one by one, disrupting their strategy. Some soldiers tried to escape using armored vehicles, but the villagers didn't stand idle and quickly planted bombs to thwart those efforts. Meanwhile, another group of soldiers stormed one of the houses, unaware that Nemesis was ready for them there. Despite being a formidable fighter and with the help of Sam, the battle became increasingly difficult because the soldiers kept coming in as if there was no end to them. Back to Atticus, who had left the trench to head to the nearest ship. At the same time, a villager named Den quickly jumped with the intent to take out the admiral. But of course that wasn't a threat to Atticus, who easily eliminated the unfortunate Den. Back to Cora and Gunnar, who boarded their old ship, using smoke bombs to help disguise themselves with the aim of sneaking into the dreadnought. Mistaking them for soldiers arriving on a damaged ship, the Imperium soldiers accepted them without much thought, and upon their arrival, the two were taken to the medical bay. Meanwhile, in the village, the words spoken by Titus and Tarak were incredibly inspiring, motivating the villagers to keep fighting without fear. They confronted the Imperium soldiers and launched unimaginable brutal attacks. In another house, Nemesis continued to fight off the never-ending wave of soldiers until her mechanical arm was hit, and Sam was also struggling. In the nick of time, Aris arrived and quickly took down one of the soldiers. Unwilling to give up, Nemesis kept fighting even with one arm. When cornered, a young boy came to help, allowing Nemesis to counterattack and eliminate the last of the soldiers, after which the formidable woman bid farewell. In the trenches, most of the villagers had been killed, prompting a lone surviving fighter to activate explosives that also killed the Imperium soldiers. Unfortunately, soon after, battle machines began to arrive, making it difficult for Titus and Tarak, despite their best efforts. The machines kept attacking relentlessly, leaving the villagers no chance to fight back, until Milius did something crazy. Back on the dreadnought, Cora and Gunnar found an opportunity to launch an attack and took out the soldiers. They split up to place explosives at various points. Disguised in uniforms, Cora and Gunnar could freely roam the ship. But after placing an explosive, one of the guards realized Cora was Arthurlay. She quickly killed the guard, sparking a fierce battle with the workers in the engine room. One of the workers reported the female intruder, and Atticus immediately knew it was Cora. He was thrilled because technically they had succeeded in capturing Cora. Atticus then ordered the soldiers to prepare the cannons to destroy the village. He didn't care about the wheat or even the soldiers fighting because his mission was the priority. Meanwhile, in the village, the residents and fighters were overwhelmed by the incessant arrival of automatons. Just when they were about to lose hope, something mysterious appeared. It was Jimmy. He sprang into action, showcasing the true power of a combat machine. Back on the Dreadnought, Gunnar anxiously waited on the ship, while Cora continued to face soldiers who kept forcing her to fight. After grabbing a sword, Cora quickly made her way to the control room where Atticus was. The scene then showed the crew targeting the cannons directly at the village, but only one shot was fired, and it missed.
We have a lock on the village. Fire at will.
Soon after, the explosives that Cora had placed were activated, causing the rear part of the Dreadnought to be destroyed. As the ship began to fall, Gunnar came to help Cora, but unfortunately he was shot before he could do anything. Cora and Atticus then resumed their sword fight. The condition of the ship caused them to slide through several rooms. In a critical moment, Cora lost her sword, putting her in a difficult position, which Atticus quickly took advantage of to finish her off. Fortunately, a sudden stab stopped him, and it turned out to be help from Gunnar. Cora then swiftly executed the final move. Cora and Gunnar returned to their old ship and managed to escape just before the Dreadnought crashed into the ground, creating a massive explosion. Shortly after, Cora's ship made an emergency landing, and Cora hurried to help Gunnar. Sadly, all her efforts were too late. After confessing his love to Cora, Gunnar died in her arms. Although their leader was dead, the Imperium soldiers continued their attack. Luckily, the Bloodaxe rebels, led by Devra, arrived to assist. They eliminated the remaining Imperium soldiers and ended the battle. After a brief celebration that night, everyone gathered to bid farewell to Nemesis, Gunnar, and the villagers who had fallen on the battlefield. The film ended with Cora feeling guilty and revealing her background, including the massacre of the royal family. However, Titus disclosed a major secret. It was impossible for the shot to have killed Princess Issa because she possessed great power. Now Cora felt a sense of relief and invited everyone to unite in the search for the princess, to fight against the Imperium and to free all the conquered planets. All the fighters and rebels agreed to help, including Jimmy, who had found a match between his goals and those of the fighters, which was to protect the weak. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.